What's up, NBA fans? Dom2K on the mic, and I'm not even gonna lie to y'all, the NBA season completely snuck up on me. I had no clue Saturday, October 1st was the first preseason game. I really had no clue we were only 30 days away from the actual season opening. Even though I was looking dead at the pictures on NBA Facebook page telling me we were a month away, it was not clicking in my brain. Part of that's because I'm not too hyped for the season, being that it looks like we have a clear-cut winner. Upsets do happen, but that's just the way it looks right now. Don't crucify me, I'm not a Warriors fan. And the other part is I'm just generally a busy person. So I figured since the season is on the horizon, I should make a season video. Most of my videos are NBA history, and I wanted to chat with y'all a little bit about the NBA coming today because I had a really good conversation to have. And it's pretty much the age-old question that gets asked every year in the past few years. Has the East finally caught up with the West in terms of conferences? Now, normally I wouldn't even entertain this conversation because, well, it never really has been a conversation. The West has been so much better than the East for such a long time. If you date back almost a decade, you see that the West routinely takes you about 50 games to get an 8th seed. But lately the script has been slowly flipping. We've been watching it change before our eyes as talent moves around the NBA. It's starting to look like the West is losing its steam, and we're not seeing those ultra competitive 8th seed races and whatnot, and it's very top heavy now. Whereas the East has really done a good job building out a deep conference. Really, nobody was paying attention because, well, they were all hating on the Warriors, and therefore I don't think a lot of people paid attention to the moves that happened with some of the really support teams. So now we're going to do a little brainstorming together. I did this on my own, but now I'm going to do it with y'all so you can see where I'm coming from. I'm going to write down East and West on a piece of paper, and then I'm going to list the teams that I'm sure about, meaning I'm sure they can be competitive, I'm sure they can probably make the playoffs, and then I'm going to draw a line after that. Every team that comes on the line after that is a team I'm iffy about for some reason, whether they've been injured or they're a developing team and you never know when a developing team is finally going to take that jump, or they're just a team that lost a free agent and I don't know how they're going to handle the loss of that free agent. So mind you, this list is in no particular order. I'm not doing a seeding chart. I'm just writing, again, you heard the instructions, you know what I'm doing here. So I write down the West. Obviously, there's the Warriors that just added KD. There's the Spurs that are always excellent, and they just added Gasol to an already excellent roster. There's the Clippers, who are a great regular season team. I don't expect much of them in the playoffs. There's the Oklahoma City Thunder that, although they lost Kevin Durant, they still have a top 5 player in the NBA. Westbrook should be able to work something out with this roster, especially in the Western Conference this year. Being that the West is not as hard as it used to be, I believe and I have faith in that team that they can work something out. I don't think it's going to be a first seed. I don't think it's going to result in a Westbrook MVP. However, I have faith that they're not going to totally crumble and be like when LeBron left the Cavs. That's not happening in my mind. And unfortunately for the West, this is where I have to draw the line because I'm iffy about every team that comes after this, right? So I write down the Blazers. I'm very, very conflicted about they're going to make the playoffs. Like I said, if you're falling under the line, that doesn't mean that you're not going to make the playoffs. It means I just don't know about you. And the Blazers, they have Damian Lillard. They weren't even projected to do what they did last season. He carried a lot of that load. And anytime you have one player, okay, not one player, they have CJ McCollum there too. But anytime you have a team that's kind of like, already exceeding expectations, you don't know what to think about that team. They're iffy to me. The Rockets, very, very iffy because they were already bad in the last season, just barely made the playoffs. Now they lost Dwight Howard and they didn't add a whole lot to that roster. So I don't know what James Harden's going to really do there. Pelicans have a very checkered past with injuries. If they're healthy, I think they can definitely make the playoffs. But if they're not healthy, they might be sitting on the sidelines again when the playoffs roll around. The Grizzlies look like they were going to blow it up last season, but they did add Chandler Parsons. Looks like they kept that core intact with Mike Conley, Zach Randolph, Gasol. So I think they're going to be a good team, but injuries make them very iffy to me. And then the Jazz. I do have faith in Gordon Hayward and Rudy Gobert. I love what they're doing. They're a young, developing team. But again, they're a developing team, and it's impossible to predict when a developing team is finally going to make that jump. And then there's just the teams I'm leaving off of this list. Now, maybe it would be wise for me to add the Wolves here, and I think I'm going to go ahead and do that because they have such a great core there with so many young players like Zach LaVine, Wiggins, and Towns, and they could make that jump to the playoffs this year. Again, that's just having faith in a developing team. I have no clue. They could be really bad, or they could be just good enough to make the playoffs. I have to wait and see their development, and I'm not putting the Kings there. I don't think the Kings, they're basically, to me, just doomed to fail until they finally decide to trade DeMarcus Cousins. Now, it's going to surprise you what I find in the East. So we obviously have the championship Cavs. We know why they're there. I think the Knicks, pending their health, they should give the Cavs a run for their money. Will they beat them? That's a different conversation, but they should be there. The Raptors, Eastern Conference, came 2 wins away from an NBA Finals berth, had that series tied. They're obviously in the mix. Celtics just added Al Horford already. We were doing something great, but then we added a legit big man. Now we're there. The Bulls, I have a lot of question about how that's going to work. I just know that they have Rondo, Wade, and Butler on the same team. It can work. I'm worried about the spacing there because I don't know. You can sag off of them and really disrupt what they're doing. But again, you put those 3 guys on the same team. I have to think they're going to be better than the 9th seed I think they're predicted to make right now. To me, I'm more sure about them than that. The Hawks are a good support team, even though they just lost Teague. They threw Dwight Howard in there. I know a lot of y'all aren't going to understand that because you hate Dwight Howard, but they basically just swapped out Horford for Howard there, and they're a decent support team. The Pacers, man, Paul George just not called out the Cavs, but he sent a "we're coming for you" message out there, basically saying they're ready to take on Cleveland. And I don't think they're going to beat them, but he has more support now, and he has Al Jefferson there and Jeff Teague. Those are 2 key free agent signings, and I'm so glad for Paul George that he has at least a decent offensive roster to work with now. They could definitely find themselves in the Eastern Conference Finals that way because they came damn close to beating the Raptors last year when it was really just Paul George out there balling. Then you have the Pistons, who gave the Cavaliers a run for their money. And all 4 games of that sweep, I'm pretty sure were close, maybe bearing 1 game or whatever. They gave them a really good fight, and a sweep won't tell you that, but they did. But check it out. This is where I'm drawing the line. Look how deep I had to get into the East before I drew the line for the West. These are all the teams I'm pretty sure about in the East, and then you look over here, these are the teams I'm sure about in the West. That's a lot more teams. Now, when I draw the line for the East, it's pretty much, the same as every year. The Bucks and the Magic are there because, well, the Bucks they fall under that developing ring, and the Magic, they just, man, what are we doing down here in Orlando? I don't know. After they traded Dwight Howard, they have this roster that's just forever, making that jump that they never really make. I don't know how to explain what's going on down here, but the Wizards have that, injury problem with Bradley Beal. Is he finally ever going to be able to stay on the court so they can get back into the playoffs and build what they had going on with him and John Wall? And then there's the Hornets, who swapped out Al Jefferson for Roy Hibbert. Yeah, so if I need to explain to you why they're in my iffy section, then I don't know what to tell you. So you guys are looking at your screen. You see the East versus the West right here. You see where the cutoff line is. What do you think? The East is definitely a deeper conference than the West this year if it works out how it should. Obviously, this is all things held constant. What you're looking at on your screen, I can't see into the future. I don't know who's getting hurt or what chemistry issues are going to arise. Obviously, there's going to be a team that does a lot better than any of us expected to, just like every year. But just starting out, it looks like the East is a deeper conference. What I want to ask you guys, though, is does that mean that they're better? Because the argument that you're probably going to hear a lot when you talk to people, wherever, your friends or the internet, they're going to say, well, the West still houses the 2 best teams in the NBA, though, and they're not wrong. The West still has the Warriors and Spurs. Bear with me here. You're going to be like, the Cavaliers just won the championship. They're the best team in the NBA. The best team does not always win, all right? A lot of the times it does, but the best team does not always win. Sometimes a team upsets another team, and that's when the best team didn't win. The reason that LeBron James got such a huge boost and everybody talking about him being the greatest this summer was because he did the unthinkable, beating the 73-win Warriors. Obviously, it was him and his team. I'm not just giving him the credit, but he was a big part of that. We're not going to revise history here, okay? I was there with y'all all last playoffs, all last season. We were all saying that the Warriors and the Spurs were the better basketball teams because they were. They were the teams that were supposed to win the NBA championship. This year, I think that gap has even gotten further with the Warriors adding Kevin Durant, the Spurs adding Pau Gasol. Like I said, bearing chemistry issues or injuries, those 2 teams just got a pretty big, pretty significant boost to their talent. The other argument I think you're going to hear from people when talking about the conferences and comparing them is people are going to say, well, okay, the Warriors have a very real chance of losing. Even though they are so head and shoulders above everyone now, people still have faith in the Spurs with Kawhi Leonard's development. Now LaMarcus Aldridge, I assume he's going to be featured a lot in that offense. And then adding Pau Gasol to that mix. They have good big men, and the Warriors, I'm not saying they don't have good big men, but Zaza Pachulia and David West is not Pau Gasol and LaMarcus Aldridge, right? Meanwhile, most of the people are going to look in the East and say, okay, well, the Cavaliers might not have as easy a time in like the first round or the second round or whatever, but at the end of the day, does a LeBron James led team have a chance to lose against any of these teams down here? We know he's not going to lose to the Raptors. I knew that last year. I don't know why anybody thought that was going to happen, and it didn't. They're not going to lose to a Pistons team. The Pistons are developing, but they're not going to beat the Cavaliers. They're not... I have a hard, I think when you look at it, and I'm looking at this sheet, I would give the best opportunity to a healthy Knicks squad. And I think people laugh when I say healthy because Derrick Rose gets made fun of a lot these days. But I think that's probably the best opportunity of a team eliminating them, because you have to fight star power with star power. If there's anything a LeBron James led team has ever proved, it's that you're not going to beat him unless you have other stars or you have other superstars. And that's another thing that's kind of lacking in the Eastern Conference, is superstars. That's another thing. When you look at the West still has more superstars than the East does. So you have Stephen Curry, Kevin Durant out there. You still have Kawhi Leonard, LaMarcus Aldridge, Chris Paul, Westbrook, Harden. You still have a plethora of stars out there. You can, split hairs between superstars, all-stars, however you define that. Go ahead and define it. But they're all out there. And then in the East, it's like, okay, the Raptors don't really have a superstar. They have Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan, which I don't think anybody holds him to the esteem of like a James Harden or something like that. Or the Celtics, that's my team, but we don't have a superstar yet. We have a good team. We have, all-stars. I want to say all-stars, all-stars. We don't have superstars, though. We don't have that star power that it would take to be the Cleveland team. The Bulls, they have star power that, again, I've already explained. I want to see the X's and O's of that and how that's really going to work with the spacing. The Hawks, come on now, they're not beating the Cavaliers. I don't need to tell you why that's not happening. But again, I think the general feeling when you look at the East, it's still the way it's always been. There's still the Cavs, and then there's still everybody else. Whereas in the West, it's really tempting now that they've added Kevin Durant to say, well, yeah, there's the Warriors and there's everybody else. But there's still San Antonio. You still have to look out for that squad. Yes, they lost to the Thunder last year. They revamped. Kawhi Leonard's going to get even better. They're still going to give the Warriors a run for their money. So anyways, I'm just kind of laying out the arguments that I believe you guys are going to hear when talking about conferences this year. I will put one more food for thought thing out there, and it's the makeup of the teams and how kind of, weird it is and how it plays into this conference conversation. So when you look at the West, I mentioned that that's where most of the star power is, and that is very true, but that star power is so randomly assorted. Like, they don't really all have the teams to go with it. So when you look at the Thunder, it's like they have Westbrook, but I think we all know they don't have the team around him to go far and actually win an NBA championship. Same thing with the Rockets, one of the best players in the NBA with Harden, but they don't have the team around them. Same thing with the Pelicans and Anthony Davis. And then the Blazers, they have CJ McCollum, but the rest of the roster is not all that great. But when you look at the East, it's like the total opposite. And that's the weird thing about it. This is where that conference disparity comes from, because they have really good teams they have a lot of teams that have a good assortment of role players, but a lot of these teams are just missing that one superstar player, like a Kevin Durant or a Chris Paul or somebody. So like the Raptors, I think they're a team that's missing just that one star you can always give the ball to and always depend on. And I think that's the same thing that the Celtics and Pistons are missing. They have a really good assortment of talent, but they need that one Kevin Durant guy. So that's really for you to decide. This is the video, and it's for you to decide what you think the better conference is, because there's arguments for both. I don't think there's an argument between which one is actually deeper, because when you look at it, as we're going into the season, the East definitely does seem to be a little bit more dependable with the way they built their teams. And then in the West, I see a lot more of I just have to wait and see how that happens. Speaking of that, Dallas, I am so sorry for being disrespectful to y'all. I know y'all are probably going to burn me at the stake for forgetting you. I completely forgot to put Dallas on the western side of things over here, and they definitely fit there because Bogut and Harrison Barnes, those are two key additions to a team that still is sporting a Dirk Nowitzki. He's older now, but he can still ball. And, I think they're an iffy team because, well, how does that all work out? Can Harrison Barnes step up and be a main guy on a team? And is Wesley Matthews actually going to recover from that Achilles injury and give you what he used to give you in Portland? If all that works out, Dallas could be a damn good team too. They could be your sleeper team in the West. That could definitely be the one that nobody sees coming as a good basketball team. So, has the East finally caught up to the West? In short, in this 15-minute video, I have no damn clue. We have to watch the NBA season and see. That's one thing we can look forward to, right? I think some things to pay attention to is the head-to-head between East and Western teams, and just pay attention to, if some teams like the Jazz and Grizzlies do rise up and maybe the Pelicans get good again, trying to build off what they had the year they played the Warriors in the playoffs. It's all just one big question mark, but here's what we have to go off of for right now. So leave your opinion in the comment section, like, comment, and sub if you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys on the next video.